Today is Tuesday, March 24th, and this is our read aloud for Out of My Mind. Where we left off the last time is where our main character, Melody, she pretty much pitched a fit because she was really upset about the classroom lessons that she had to partake in or participate in. And this was after her teacher was going through each letter of the alphabet and sounds. And we have to remember that Melody is really, really intelligent, but she's unable to communicate verbally, which means talk out loud. The only way that she's communicating right now is she's crying and she's shrieking, which means like screaming. And the principal just came in and told the teacher to call Melody's mom. A moment later, the teacher had my mother on the phone. Mrs. Brooks, this is Melody's teacher, Anastasia Billups. Can you come to the school right away? I knew my mother had to be worried. Was I sick? Bleeding? No, she's not ill. She's fine. We think, Mrs. Billups was saying in her most professional sounding teacher voice. Ma'am, well, we just can't get her to stop screaming. She's got the whole class in an uproar. I could picture my mother on the other end of the line trying to figure out what was going on. Luckily, it was her day off. I knew she'd be there in a few minutes, so I gradually calmed down and finally stopped. The other kids quieted down as well, like somebody had clicked off the switch. Old MacDonald continued to play. My mother arrived faster than I thought possible. When I saw her jeans and dirty sweatshirt, I realized she'd dropped everything and jumped in the car. She ran over to me and asked what was wrong. I took a few deep, shuddering breaths. Then I pointed to the alphabet on my talking board and screeched some sounds of frustration. This is about the alphabet? My mother asked. Yes. I pointed, then pounded the answer. She turned to Mrs. Billups. What were you working on before all the screaming started? Mrs. Billups replied in that superior tone that teachers dressed in nice red business suits use when they're talking to mothers with dirty shirts on. We were reviewing the alphabet, of course. The sound of the letter B, if I recall. I always start with basics. These children need constant review because they don't retain information like the rest of us. My mother was starting to get the picture. So you were going over the ABCs? Correct. Ma'am, it's February. I beg your pardon? School started in August. You haven't gotten past the letter B in 6 months? Mom was bawling and unballing her fists. I've never seen my mother hit anything, but when I see her doing that, I always wonder if she might. Who are you to tell me how to run my class? The teacher asked angrily. And who are you to bore these children with mindless activities? My mother snapped back. How dare you? The teacher gasped. I dare anything for my daughter, Mom replied, her voice dangerous, and for the rest of these children. Ma'am, you don't understand, the teacher began. Mom interrupted her. No, Mrs. Billups, it is you who does not understand. Mom looked like she was trying to calm herself down because she then said, Look, have you ever said to yourself, if they show that commercial on TV one more time, I think I'll just scream. Mrs. Billups nodded slowly. Or, if I have to sit 5 more minutes in this traffic jam, I'll simply explode. Well, yes, I suppose, she admitted. Well, I think that's just what happened to Melody. She said to herself, if I have to go over those letters one more time, I'll just scream. So, she did. I really don't blame her. Do you? Mrs. Billups looked from my mother to me. Well, I guess not, now that you explain it that way, Mrs. Billups finally said, her voice now as calm as my mother's. Mrs. Billups, Melody knows her alphabet, all the sounds of the letters, and hundreds of words on sight. She can add and subtract numbers in her head. We discussed all this at our last parent conference, didn't we? I could tell my mother was trying to control her temper. Well, I thought you were exaggerating, the teacher said. Parents are not always realistic when it comes to these children. If you call them these children one more time, I might scream, my mother warned. But Melody does have mental and physical limitations, Mrs. Billups argued, trying to put Mom in her place, I guess. You have to learn to accept that. And the fire was back. Melody can't walk. Melody can't talk. But she's extremely intelligent, and you better learn to accept that, Mom spat out. The teacher backed up an inch or two. Didn't you read her records from last year? Mom demanded. Melody loves listening to the books on tape. I tried to approach each child with an open mind and not be influenced by other teachers. All the records are in a box someplace. Well, respectfully, maybe you should find that box, my mother said. Well, I never, Mrs. Billups countered. Well, maybe that's your problem, Mom replied with a grin. Then she tilted her head and turned toward the CD player. One more thing. May I see that wonderful CD you're playing? Of course, Mrs. Billups said, smiling a little. The children love this. Do they? Mom asked. The teacher lifted the disc from the player. Twinkle, twinkle. Silence. Willie sighed out loud. Mom took the CD, dug down in her purse for a moment, gave Mrs. Billups a $5 bill, and deftly snapped the disc in half. That music was cruel and unusual punishment. Freddie and Maria cheered. Gloria whispered, Thank you. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for Mrs. Billups. She looked so confused. She just didn't get it. Mom walked over to the sink in our room, turned on the warm water, and soaked a stack of paper towels under the faucet. She came back to me and gently wiped my face with the warm, soggy wad. Nothing had ever felt so soothing. She then brushed my hair, adjusted the straps and buckles on my wheelchair, gave me a quick hug, and went home. Mrs. Billups quit her job after spring break, so we ended up with a series of substitutes till the end of the year. I think she had figured it would be easy to work with other people, excuse me. Chapter 8. For a long time it was just me, my mom and dad, and my goldfish Ollie. I was 5 years old when I got him, and I had him for almost 2 years before he died. I guess that's old for a goldfish. Nobody knew Ollie's name, but me, that's okay. Ollie had been a prize from a carnival Dad had taken me to, and I think Ollie's life was worse than mine. He lived in a small bowl on the table in my room. The bottom of the bowl was covered with tiny pink rocks, and a fake plastic log sat wedged in the rock. I guess it was supposed to look like something from under the sea, but I don't think there are any lakes or oceans that really have rocks that color. Ollie spent all day long swimming around that small bowl, ducking through the fake log, and then swimming around again. He always swam in the same direction. The only time he changed his course was when Mom dropped a few grains of fish food into his bowl each morning and evening. I'd watch him gobble the food, then poop them out, then swim around and around once again. I felt sorry for him. At least I got to go outside and to the store and to school. Ollie just swam in a circle all day. I wondered if fish ever slept. But any time I woke up in the middle of the night, Ollie was still swimming, his little mouth opening and closing like he was trying to say something. One day when I was about 7, Ollie jumped out of his bowl. I had been listening to music on the radio. Mom had finally figured out I liked the country western station, and I was in a good mood. The music was sounding orangey and yellowish as I listened, and the faint whiff of lemon seemed to surround me. I felt real mellow as I watched Ollie do his thing round and round his bowl. But suddenly, for no reason I could figure, Ollie dove down to the bottom of his bowl, rushed to the top, and hurled himself right out of the bowl. He landed on the table. He gasped and flopped, and I'm sure he was surprised he couldn't breathe. His eyes bulged and the gills on his side pulsed with effort. I didn't know what to do. He'd die without water really fast. So I screamed. Mom was downstairs or maybe outside getting the mail, but she didn't come right away. I screamed again, louder. I cried out. I yelled. I screeched. Ollie continued to flop and gasp, looking more desperate. Ollie needed water. I howled once more, but Mom didn't come running. Where could she be? I knew I had to do something, so I reached over to the table and stretched out my arm. I could just barely touch Ollie's bowl. I figured if I could get the fish wet at least a little bit, I might be able to save him. I hooked my fingers on the edge of the fishbowl and I pulled. Water splashed everywhere, all over the table, in fact, the carpet, me, and Ollie. He seemed to flop a little less for a second or two. Please tune in tomorrow to see what happens to Ollie.